What's up, fellow tamers in Destiny? Back with round 2 of Gamers Alley Digimon Locals, held on April 2nd, this past Saturday. This is the second round versus X-Antibody. I have to admit it was quite the challenging matchup. I did have a few misplays here and there due to the fact that I wasn't too familiar with how my opponent's cards worked. In all fairness, I'm still playing Musketeers, so my brain is still set in BT6 format. Jokes aside, let's get into the first round. Taking the first turn, I hatch a Demi-Marimon and go straight into the BT6 Goblimon and further into the EX1 Ogremon. Already off to a great start, Ogremon is my main means of attack, so having him ready to go is key to a swift victory. Turn is passed over on 2 memory, my opponent hatches a BT7 Dorimon in raising and digivolves into the BT2 Toy Agumon. Reviews his hand and ends his turn by playing the Blocker Agumon, who started at 5. On me at 1, I promote the Ogremon and end my turn by playing the BT2 Intmon. Opponent takes some time to review his hand and decides to promote the Toy Agumon out onto the battle area. Soon after, digivolves it into the Dark Tyrannomon. This sort of puts a stop to my Ogremon, so I'll have to deal with the blockers first somehow before attempting to check security. Sets up a Promo Tsunorizomon and passes the turn. I start by hatching another Demi-Marimon and attempt to check security with the Intmon. Whether or not my opponent chooses to block or not, there's a high likelihood it will get deleted as I wanted. Opponent decides to block with the Tyrannomon, Intmon is deleted, and I resolve its effect and discard a Fly Bullet and a BeelStarmon in the process. Already off to a good start. I then play the Matashita for 4 and return the Intmon back to my hand. At least now I won't have to worry about being choked on memory for the remainder of the game. Hatches into a Dorimon and digivolves into a Promo Tsunorizomon. Continues to evolve in raising by going into the Dorugamon. After some thought, opponent checks his first security with Promo Tsunorizomon, but ends up setting a Mini Tachikawa for me. Finishes up the turn by digivolving into the Dorugreymon on top of the Dark Tyrannomon, and a few effects trigger. Places a Dorugamon under its sources, which now protects Dorugreymon from deletion until the end of my turn, as well as getting to draw an extra card due to Dorimon's effect. I take my turn by digivolving into a Goblimon, and further into the Eismon Scatter mode and raising. I'm still in an awkward position here, so I just opted to play the Intmon again and pass it back over to my opponent at 2. My opponent hesitantly attacks security with a Dorugreymon for his second check and clears it. Continues his turn by digivolving the Promo Tsunorizomon into another Dorugamon, and ends the turn with a Dorugoromon evolution on the Dorugreymon. Reboots the Dorugoromon during my unsuspend phase, and I go ahead and continue my turn by promoting the Eismon Scatter mode into the battle area. Attempt to check security with Intmon once more, hoping to bait a block. Opponent decides to let it go through, and Intmon does its job and gets the deletion on the check. 3 more cards into the trash, but only 1 hit this time with Jewalt Schwarmer. Attempt another security check with Eismon Scatter mode. Opponent is being very cautious, not wanting to allow me to get these deletion effects to trigger, but realize that it'll happen regardless, so decides to take the block with Dorugamon. This will now trigger a train of draws and discards, resolving the Eismon Scatter mode by discarding a Fly Bullet and Happy Bullet Showering. Another Fly Bullet with Goblimon, and another Happy Bullet Showering with Demi-Marimon. The optimal discard of 4 7-cost option cards. You love to see it. It's still early game, and I can now play a BeelStarmon for just 5 memory. I can easily start shooting bodies off my opponent's board to take back control of the game. I now decide to attempt a security check with Ogremon. I safely assume that my opponent would indeed block with the Agumon, but honestly it's just another reason to build up my trash even more, so I trigger Ogremon's effective discard and add another fly bullet into my trash. But to my surprise, my opponent takes the risk with a bold play by allowing the check to go through, and luckily for him, Ogremon crashes into an Alphamon of all things. Due to it being revealed in security, this now allows my opponent to add it to his hand. I resolve Demi-Maramon's deletion by drawing and discarding one. I decide to add a BeelStarmon to the pile. With the way things turned out, I have to play the BeelStarmon in order to delete the Dorugoromon. I grab a Jewalt Schwarmer from my trash and decide to play that in order to get rid of my opponent's pesky blockers, suspend the Mimi Tachikawa in order to gain a memory back. Next, I play the Calling from the Darkness. I delete the BeelStarmon in order to return up to 2 purple Digimon from my trash back to hand. I bring back the BeelStarmon and the Ogremon. I play the BeelStarmon a second time, and this time grab a fly bullet in order to delete the Dorugoromon. Had you going there for a moment, didn't I? Successfully pulled off the BeelStarmon Infinite this turn in order to effectively wipe my opponent's board completely. Unfortunate for my opponent. It'll be quite difficult to build back his board after that. Plays the Koda Demodo Tamer in hopes to add necessary resources into his hand for the next turn. And a miss. No X-Antibody cards with the reveal. Turn passes over on 1, but my Matashita guarantees I start at 3 memory. Hatch into a Pogmon and start setting up the Ogremon line once more in Raising. And I finally set up the Tai Kamiya. Now it's about mid-game and my deck is practically at full power. Plenty of 7 constant Musketeer cards in trash, as well as access to more powerful red option cards now. Promotes the Dorugamon and goes into the Dorugreymon. Triggered the effect to add an X-Antibody under its sources, which allows it to be invulnerable until the end of my turn. Check security and clears it. Ends the turn by digivolving into an Alphamon. I promote the Ogremon up, and it's time to start shooting. Ogremon checks security, trigger the effect to discard a card in order to gain an extra security check, as well as gain the 2000 DP boost from Goblimon. In tandem with my Tai Kamiya, I'm hitting hard with 8000 DP for 2 total checks. Once again, Tai Kamiya made all the difference. That extra 1000 DP really gave Ogremon the push it needed to clear those checks successfully. BeelStarmon goes in with 12,000 DP, successfully cleared, and that's checkmate because I have the Demonic Disaster in hand. A flawless first game, if I do say so myself. Honestly, with the way this deck plays, I'm much more confident with continuing play with this deck in the BT8 format. We'll see how it fares once it comes to that. Alright, here we go, second game of round 2. I believe this was the round where I made quite a few misplays due to my lack of knowledge on my opponent's cards on top of having a bricked hand at the start. It was rough. I believe I ended up passing turn roughly 3 times. I hatch a Demi-Marathon, and look, there's the first turn pass. Opponent hatches a Dorimon and plays the Kodo Demodo to start, reveals the top 4 cards and claims the Dorumon. Hoping to draw something I could actually play, I ended up having to pass turn a second time. My opponent was absolutely baffled. It's unfortunate, but it happens. Opponent keeps digivolving and raising by going into the Dorugamon. Next, he hard plays the Dorumon to search, but no hits. Technically drew a card I can actually reasonably play, but still was not ideal, but it had to be done. I'm already down 2 turns of no plays, so I needed something on board. I play the Ogremon I just drew and pass it over on 4. promotes the Dorugamon from raising. Checks his first security and triggers a fly bullet, which I will use to delete the Dorugamon. After regretting his decision to bring out that Dorugamon from raising, my opponent plays a SealStarmon and passes the turn. Honestly, at this point I have no choice but to start hard playing all these 7-cost options I have, since I have no real reliable way of discarding them at the moment. So I play the Fly Bullet and delete the SealStarmon. Don't want any pesky blockers if I can't help it. Another Dorimon is hatched. Digivolves on top of the Dorumon into a Dorugamon. Plays a Metal Cannon in order to draw an extra card, and goes into a Doru Greymon. Activates the effect once more to add an X-Antibody under its sources. And here comes my first misplay. Since it didn't recur the last game, I honestly assumed it was my turn at 1 memory. My opponent kindly explains that he gains a memory due to the Dorumon, so let's just go ahead and put that Goblimon back on top of my deck. Now the turn is officially passed over after my opponent Digivolves into the Dorugoramon. Digivolve into the Goblimon and raising. Set up the Mimi Tachikawa for 2 memory. Attempting to check security. Realistically, I probably will crash on the first check due to no DP boosts on this attack. However, it does allow me to discard a 7-cost option card. And yep, that's a super dead Ogremon. Crashed right into that Dorugoramon. And here we are with my second misplay. I cast the Fly Bullet for 7 memory in an attempt to delete the Dorugoramon, but completely forgot that it could not be deleted this turn. Opponent was being nice enough to allow me to take it back, but that wouldn't be fair, so I committed to my blunder and passed the turn on 6 memory. Look on the bright side, I at least got another 7-cost option in trash. We both laugh off the blunder, and my opponent continues his turn. Starts off by Digivolving the Dorimon and raising into the Promo Tsunorizamon. Takes the time to consider his next play now, and whoa, okay, that's a Zubagon Punch. Opponent is really going all in this turn. Putting all the eggs into the basket, eh? I do go ahead and suspend Mimi in response to gain a memory. Attempts a check on security. On attack, triggers effect to add a X-Antibody beneath its sources, triggering a +1 memory gain. That's a big boy. 3 checks at 17,000 coming up. All checks are cleared, but the last one will end up blowing up the Dorugoramon, as it is a Happy Bullet showering. Plays the Numamon for 3 and goes straight into a Doru Greymon. Once again, adds an X-Antibody into its sources, and it's back to me on 2. I go ahead, promote the Goblimon up. With nothing much to do this turn other than to hope that my last security card somehow miraculously saves me, I go ahead and play the BeelStarmon for 7 memory. Play the Fly Bullet, which does nothing, but allows me to at least suspend the Mimi in order to start my opponent 1 memory less on his next turn. Opponent was still playing cautiously, even though he technically can win here. Decides against promoting the Tsunorizamon in fear it would be deleted. Plays a Metal Cannon and draws 2 cards. Checks my last security and reveals the Matt Ishida, which allows me to add back the Ogremon to my hand. Plays the Dark Tyrannomon and is back on me at 4 memory. Honestly, I really don't have enough to clear out 4 total security cards plus lethal this turn, so this game was lost. I go ahead and concede defeat, and we move on to our final round. At this point in our match, I started to pick up on how his deck works and what cards did what, so I went into this final round much more confident. Opponent takes the first turn this time. hatches the Dorimon, and goes into the Dorumon, and finally a Numamon. I start my turn with a Demi-Meramon, which I then Digivolve into a Impmon. I pass the turn with a Eismon Scatter Mode. Opponent moves the Numamon up and goes into the Doru Greymon. Triggers effect to add the X-Antibody under its sources in order to gain a memory, draw a card, and gaining an invincibility until the end of my turn. Then finishes with the Doru Goramon evolution. I promote the Impmon up and Digivolve into the Eismon Scatter Mode. Really banking on getting as much trash buildup as I can early game here in order to effectively start playing my BeelStarmons. First security check is a success, crashed into a Dorugomon. Deletion effect triggers and allowed me to trash 2 copies of Transcendent Sword. Better in trash than in hand since I don't have my red source in play just yet. Second check with the other Eismon Scatter Mode and another successful crash, back-to-back Dorugomons. This time, I'll be benefiting from both my Scatter Mode and Demi-Meramon's deletion effects. I resolve the Eismon Scatter Mode first and discard a Fly Bullet and a Jewel Schwarmer. Next is Demi-Meramon's effect, but I didn't have a optimal card to trash, so I just rid myself of a Zwart defeat. Well, I need a body out at least in order to continue doing damage and retaining security lead, and so I take the risk of playing BeelStarmon for 8 memory. Fly Bullet unfortunately does not work due to Dorugoramon retaining its invincibility this turn. Still just triggering it since I kinda have to. Another Dorimon hatched in Raising, which soon becomes a promo Tsunorizumon. Goes for the security check. Checks 2 cards at, I believe, 13,000. First card sets up a Tai Kamiya, and the second is a BeelStarmon. Not enough to stop the boosted attack. Lots of memory to work with here, so goes ahead and sets up the Kota and reveals the top 4 cards of his deck. Adds the Dorugomon to hand, and bottom decks the remaining cards. Goes and Digivolves the Tsunorizumon with the newly acquired Dorugomon for 2 memory, and passes the turn with a blocker Agumon. Pokemon hatched in Raising. Seeing as how the Dorugoramon doesn't have Reboot, I had to go for it. With Tai's 1000 VP boost, I can now swing over it, but of course my opponent decides to block with the Agumon. I'm sure he was expecting it. Next best thing to do now is to rid my opponent of his Tamer, and so I Digivolve BeelStarmon into a Omnimon Zwart defeat. The Rugomon now in the battle area, effectively giving my opponent another blocker, making it rather difficult for me to attack effectively. Attack security with Dorugoramon first and triggers the Giga Storm. Only viable target to delete will be the Dorugomon. Second check is revealed, and wow, can you believe it? A Happy Bullet showering. How lucky can you get? A huge turn of events. This may well cause my opponent to lose, but the game isn't over just yet. Opponent ends the turn with a Chumon. On me at 1, not much I can do in terms of plays, so I Digivolve the Pokemon into a Gobblemon, in preparation for the eventual Ogremon. Slight misplay, I should have probably attacked with the Zwart defeat first, but I had my sights on a potential game-winning play. I play the Calling from the Darkness to delete my Zwart defeat, which in turn allows me to delete his Chumon. I'll be safe from attack next turn. I return a BeelStarmon and a Impmon back to hand. I then end my turn by playing the Impmon I just retrieved. Opponent hatches a Dorimon and goes into a Toy Agumon. Opponent, now being very wary as to not pass over too much memory, checks my trash pile to confirm just how much I can play a BeelStarmon for. Plays the promo Tsunorizumon, and finally ends his turn by further Digivolving into a Grumblemon in Raising. I go ahead and promote the Goblemon in and Digivolve into the Ogremon. Very smart of my opponent not to give me any more than the 2 memory, knowing full well that I could potentially have a demonic disaster in hand, which I did. I could have won the game this turn. I attempt to check with Intmon first. I swung into a metal cannon, so Intmon lives to see another turn potentially. Attempt to check the remaining security with Ogremon, trigger his effect, and now I'm checking for 2 cards at 8000 DP. Successfully cleared, getting a lot of mileage out of my Ogremon. Seeing as my opponent has a Digimon prepped in Raising, I have to delete the Tsunorizamon in order to guarantee I survive next turn, and so I played the BeelStarmon for a reduced cost of 8 now and appropriately fly bullet the little guy. Opponent goes for the final check on my security with Grumblemon and triggers a fly bullet. My security was heavily armed this round, how very fortunate for me. As good of a deck this is, it all still comes down to luck sometimes. Opponent plays the Alphamon for the lulz, and I go ahead and end things with BeelStarmon. A phenomenal match, regardless of the misplays that occurred. I had an absolute blast with this matchup. It was a great learning experience, and I definitely feel better about this particular matchup now. It was a very close game, but Lady Luck seemed to have chosen me that day. Hope you all enjoyed this commentary coverage on round 2 of the Gamers Alley Digimon TCG Local held this past Saturday, April the 2nd. What were some of your favorite moments during this match? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to stay tuned for the round 3 game for the conclusion of this tournament. Also be sure to check out my Twitch channel where I go live every Friday and Sunday with various Let's Plays and food-related streams. I also have loads of VODs of past playthroughs and cooking for your enjoyment, so be sure to give me a follow there so you don't miss out on the fun. You can find the link to my Twitch channel in the description below. I appreciate the support and much love to you all. I'll see you all in the next video, so until next time, be well, be safe, and as always, be hungry for more. Catch you guys later.